Hello and welcome to the Jerich Show. I'm Javvad Malik as always, and we have got a great show for you today. We have a very special guest who once tried to host a B-sides on a cruise ship. We talk about the FBI patching your exchange server and why estate agents don't really understand OSINT. That's all coming up on today's show.
Welcome to the Jerich Show, featuring your hosts, Javvad Malik and Eric Krohn. Timely topics, poorly presented.
Hello, everybody. Eric, you're back. You're not dead. How's it going?
I'm mostly dead. For our listeners / followers out there on the YouTubes and or our wonderful podcast, I am currently at home with my wife, quarantined for COVID. So I'm not dead yet. But I'm hanging on by a thread. But I care enough to be here for you, our viewers and listeners.
Wow, that's so considerate of you.
You like that?
Sorry for your poor wife having to be in quarantine with you, first being ill and then in the quarantine with you. Anyway, we have a fantastic guest today, Mr. Derrick Thomas. Welcome to the Jerich Show. How are you doing?
Yes. Oh, pretty good. Thanks for the invite.
Excellent. No worries, no worries. So your Twitter ID I see is BSides Tampa. Is that something you're involved in?
Yeah, that's what I do from time to time, when nothing's good on TV. So yeah, it keeps me entertained.
Derrick doesn't tell you he hasn't seen a TV show in like 5 years because of it. So that's all he does.
Yeah. Everything's on demand. It's like, all right, this is a nice show. Like I'm just watching Star Wars now for the first time. So yeah.
Yeah. I've known Derrick for a number of years now, as he's been putting together the wonderful BSides Tampa show here, which is fantastic. And if you know me, I'm a huge fan of B-sides. Having been to a lot of B-sides, one of the beautiful things about our job, Javvad, is we get to travel, right? So I've probably been to, I'm guessing, at least 24 different B-sides now across the nation, which is really cool. But it's awesome to have a big one right here in our own backyard. So that's where I got to know Derrick from, is from that back in my ISC squared days, back when I was just a schmuck there trying to do right in the world.
Yeah, we also have how that worked out.
Yeah, well, here I am now, right? So I think it's a step up. Happy days. All right. So Javvad, what do we have for stories today? We got some interesting ones. I think these are going to be fun.
These are going to be fun. Let's go straight for the jugular today. And the FBI, which I assume operates slightly different than any of our services here on this side of the pond in the civilized world. They've been doing a service. They've been finding, exchange servers with shells on it, going in and fixing them for people. And is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think we've just resolved the whole cybersecurity professional shortage right here. We'll just have the FBI, maybe the CIA can come in, or NSA. They're willing to help us out, right? Everyone's willing to hook us up by coming in and taking care of our security problems for us. I mean, what else could we ask for, right? Isn't that what the government's for?
Yeah. It's kind of creepy, but it's kind of cool though, because a lot of times, a lot of big companies, they know to get rid of some of this stuff, but then you have, well, even large companies, they may not even realize they have these servers out there. They have these shells on it, and at least somebody's being proactive, because the FBI could probably email them for 20 times and they probably wouldn't even fix it. So, I guess it comes down to like, okay, well, somebody has to fix it, so let me just jump in there and do it.
But you get into the whole, like, is it really their job? And what got me is this is under the premise of a search warrant. Now, I don't know about you, but, when I see search warrant, I don't think of, I'm going to come in and look, I think of I'm going to come in and look around for stuff, but I don't think of I'm going to come in and look around for stuff. And while we're at it, while we're searching your home, I'm going to go ahead and repair your broken microwave. And, that door is squeaking a little bit. I'm going to oil the hinges. And, this is not something that is normal, in my opinion, with the search warrant.
Yeah. Oh, I kind of wonder, like, what are the limitations? Because are they just doing it for vendors that are directly working with government entities, or just random people they like, Joe Blow Incorporated, let me go fix yours. So yeah, I can understand them saying that, okay, well, we have to fix these because you do direct business with the federal government. So yeah, under our terms of conditions, et cetera, we can justify it that way. But just randomly going out and fixing them, unless you're Santa Claus, you really shouldn't be sneaking into anyone's equipment and making changes.
Well, what we got here is the FBI is now attempting to alert server owners that it removed shells from. So they weren't even telling people.
No.
I mean,
this is the thing. I think it sets a really bad precedence for the future, because while this might be a simple fix that you can get away with doing without ruining anything, if you try and do it on some complex environments, whose liability is it if you end up screwing up a production system or exposing customer data in the process? Secondly, who's to stop the FBI from planting their own backdoors in these under the guise of fixing another backdoor? And it's not beyond government agencies to do it. So I think there's that lack of oversight and the lack of transparency that is quite concerning in this regard.
Yeah, I mean, who's coordinating the reboots on this, right? Not that it takes a reboot, but half the time you have to stop and start services. Who's coordinating that, right? I mean, this to me is honestly just like overstepping bounds. And I get that, yes, it's a problem, but is it a government problem? And to your point, Derrick, if it's not an entity that's dealing with the government directly, that puts the government itself at risk directly. And I'm not talking about, 7 layers deep in the supply chain because they provide cardboard boxes for the shipping. I'm talking about like immediate sort of concern to the US government. This just seems to me like it's just a nasty direction to be heading into. But it is what it is. And what do you do about it? Who do you go to complain about this? I guess your Congress people or whatever, and you'll get on the list. You're going to have that new tab on the Google on your machine. It's this is what the FBI is holding on to. Questions from the FBI to refine your search. I don't know.
Yeah. Because I also wonder, like, what happens if they find something that comes to their attention? Like, okay, you're logged in my server, you found a folder that says child porn on it. You can't ignore it, but you also legally can't report it either. So what do they do? Do they just say, oh well, we didn't see it, just ignore it? So yeah, this opens up a whole Pandora's box of questions and legal issues.
Well, and it doesn't even have to be as deep as that, but it could be, some finances that they suddenly get interested in, and they're kind of going, hey, there's a folder called the clean books, well, hey, we should go look at that. Or it's I don't know. I think it's pretty crazy. Javvad, would something like this ever happen in the UK, do you think?
I'd like to say no, but who's to say it's not already been happening? So, yeah, I think over here, just primarily because of the extensive privacy laws and the right, excuse me, the individual protections that we have, I think it's less likely. And over here, like the NCSC is the National Cybersecurity Center, is the sort of the cyber arm of the government, and they're far better in liaising with organizations. They have a very strong public-private relationship that's there, and so I think it's perfectly fair for an organization like that to scan and to find vulnerabilities, and then have a process in place to work with the organization, and also maybe with Microsoft, with whom that organization does have a contract for support and to push updates in a legit way, in an organized way. So I think there needs to be that sort of cooperation in place, because Microsoft is the one that I haven't seen mentioned really in this story, like what their role was, or were they asked whether they could go and fix this, or whether they could do something about it, because it's their product. It's they're responsible for maintaining it in, the code base for it and what have you. So, I think that there's a lot of other avenues that should have been or could have been explored prior to just kicking down the doors like the old Yosemite Sam and like, so I'm here to dispense justice, boys.
Well, as I understand it, Javvad, what they're doing is they've been calling people and saying, "Hey, this is Microsoft, and you have a virus on your computer." And it just occurred to me, this is like that scam, right? Hey, we're Microsoft. We're here to help you, right?
Yeah.
People are going, "Yeah, report that one. Report that one." And it's the FBI going, "Come on, guys, really? No, really, we're here to help." I mean, again,
you say that as a joke, but really, there must be these call centers gearing up, saying, we need to call up these organizations and say we're from the FBI. We recently patched you, and now you owe us $500 for patching you.
There's a batch load of emails going out right now, just addressed to these CTOs and CIOs with like, payment from Microsoft fix from FBI.
Can you imagine getting something like that? Like, no, really, this really is the FBI. We really went into your server and fixed this for you. I mean, it just made me think of that because that scam's been around for so long, and we always say they will never contact you and they don't care if you have a virus. We were wrong. We can't say that anymore, man. All right. Well, what's our next one, Javvad?
So the next one is a little less intense. It's something on the slightly smaller scale. It's an estate agent in the UK. A lot of them do these 3D virtual tours now, where they go in with a 360 camera. They take a lot of pictures, and then you can like virtually go through the house because COVID. And they publish one of these, and first off, like we mentioned before we started recording, the person who put their house up for sale didn't bother cleaning up at all. I don't know what would possess someone to just leave their house in a state. And then the photographer that went around from the estate agent didn't really bother like saying to them, "Hey, do you mind putting away anything?" and just happily clicked away all the pictures. And in that there was some data, private data, that had quote unquote slipped past its staff and the homeowner.
Brilliant, yeah.
It included share dividend check, an insurance policy document, an invoice for a stair lift. Some family photos had been left unblurred. It's in the big scheme of things, it's not like the FBI, but it's I think it's a good reminder that we all have a part to play in security these days, and this information is just so freely available. It's not like it used to be in the old days where you had to go physically to your local estate agent and they would give you a printed brochure of houses for sale or anything like that. This is like publicly available. You can correlate that with the location of the house. Google Maps will give you a nice oversight of that. You can look on social media for other photos. So you can build up a really big comprehensive profile of who these people are and what they do and all sorts of things. And this information can then be used for like, hey, let's take out a mortgage on behalf of these people or anything like that. So I think it's just a good reminder, like everyone has their part to play and everyone is responsible in building that security chain, because any weak part can undo. You could have like the best EDR in the world, you could have the best SIM in the world, you could have the best next gen firewalls in the world, but if someone's going in there taking a picture and posting it to a website, it's not really going to help.
Yeah, and these were in like ultra high res, right? If we can add an effect to that later, that would be awesome. But no, you get the idea. I mean, these were like ultra high resolution 3D, where you could zoom right in and like see the text on this. And for our American viewers, let me explain something to you. Estate agents over there are what we call real estate agents, not the people that sell off your estate when you kick the bucket. Okay, so it's a different thing. But these are real estate agents in the US side here. But yeah, it's cool that the technology is there that we can go through and do this, and it started off with the simple, like, someone sticks a camera in the middle of a room on a tripod and it does a 360. So you can go in that room and you can do a quick 360. But it's really expanded to so much more where it really is like a virtual walkthrough. But yeah, I mean, when you have Neanderthals like this that leave everything laying out, I mean, this is why in offices we have a clean desk policy, right? And so we've talked about some of the issues with working from home. and the added issues with that. And this is one of them, is not having a clean desk policy at work, right? But we have to think about this as these new technologies come on and they're being used. What are we at risk of? And they did say that they told them to put everything away, et cetera, but they obviously didn't. These are people out to sell homes. These are not privacy experts necessarily that should be expected to go through every frame zoomed way in and see it, but they need to make sure that everybody understands what's going on and take at least reasonable precautions. I don't know if we consider this reasonable precautions when there's a pile of stuff on the desk. I get it. The kids' pictures or there was a photo frame with like the dog's name, which is oftentimes used for a password reset, right? That was out there, and I don't expect them to see that. But things like, financial statements and stuff like that probably should be in your handbook and saying, this is not good. If you're going to be putting them up, you need to be looking at that. Yeah. What do you think, Derek?
Well, the thing that surprised me is that it's not clean. It's like, it looks like a really bad Craigslist ad or like police photos of a murder scene, something, a preview for the next episode of First 48. And I was also laughing. I look at the sidebar here. It says, why Australia is in hysterics over Navy twerking. So yes, weird thing there. I have ADD. Sorry, it's look at everything. But I guess this also goes to show that how when new technology comes out, everyone's in a rush to get it and adopt it. But, we probably should not be in as much of a rush to adopt new technology, because something simple as taking photos and posting them online, you may want to actually look at that and, okay, maybe implement some type of OCR or some type of character recognition software that will actually look for things such as pictures, automatically blur them out instead of leaving it up to the user to actually do that themselves. Because it could have probably avoided a lot of this, but like I said, because it's new technology, we have to have the nice, bright, shiny things. All right, well, this is what happens sometimes.
Yeah, and with the cameras being so high res, if you think about it, like just our cell phones here have 20 billion freaking pixels. It's just insane these days. It's not like the old days where where we first started off with the webcams and dial up, and you were lucky to see like a moving pixelated block on there. It was kind of like, when you were a kid trying to watch the other cable channels by, having it halfway tuned or something, we're not in those days now. We're talking about incredibly good graphics from even something as simple as putting one of these on a tripod and having it spin around. Just the sheer resolution we're talking about these days is incredible.
Yeah. Well, and like the point that you made earlier about security is not just the manufacturer's responsibility; it's also the consumer's responsibility. They have to take some responsibility into making sure it's secure, such as, because you can take these high resolution photos, check what's in the background or try to secure a camera, etc. So you can't really blame the software manufacturer or whoever created the application itself. That's probably the consumer who should have done a better job at, okay, let me make sure I clean my desk off or do whatever.
Or even the agents that are charging for the service of listing your home and using this technology. What do you think, Javvad?
Yeah, I agree. What I was just thinking of was that these photos are such high resolution, yet every time you see a criminal activity and like it's like graining and pixelated.
It looks like a Minecraft Steve walking across.
Every like Nest Home video when someone's like stealing the packages, I'm like, okay, well, these videos do nothing. I can't really recognize anybody. I can just say, okay, well, that package is missing. Someone stole it. That's about it. So, but these photos are crystal clear. I can see like almost birthmarks and pictures here. So, but yeah, maybe they can get that outside.
That's amazing. I'm surprised you saw that as you were fixated on the Navy twerking by the Australians. We have a colleague that's in Australia. Yeah, we have a colleague in Australia. We need to ask her about that, Javvad.
Yeah, I'll be Googling that after the show today.
It's funny. It is funny, but here's the deal, and I'm going to swing this back around and make it security related. But that's some clickbait right there. That's the psychology behind clickbait, and it works, right? It got your attention, and now you're curious.
Like, damn it.
Yeah, there's this whole thing. It's called the information. Nice. It's called the information gap theory. And basically what they do is they give you a little bit of information, but they don't give you the rest that you would need to know. And it's very compelling for us to go out and do that. I talk about that in some of my social engineering talks, the information gap theory, but it works. It's amazing. Here we are. Look at that. They got a click out of us. Wonderful.
This is the BBC, and just to give you some international context, there are three bits of there are only three categories of story we're interested in: Prince Philip, coronavirus, and Brexit. Everything else is just a massive bucket of nothingness.
Everything else is like B-roll stuff.
Yeah, I thought you were done with Brexit anyways, man. But here we are.
Yeah. Oh no, it'll be like the year 2045. We're still negotiating.
Oh yeah, Brexit is kind of like herpes. It never really goes away. It's just hides. Like, you guys supposed to have been left like a year or two ago, weren't you?
You would think, yeah. I don't know. They were all excited, and the Scottish, I think, are still trying to figure out how to get out of this mess too, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I have a couple of friends in Ireland who've been complaining about that. It's like it's the opportunity to break away from the UK, and I'm like, oof.
Hey, all right. So, having said that, Derrick, we wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the stuff today, because as we've gone into the COVID thing, there's been a lot of new conferences pop up. I've seen a lot of new ones out there. And virtual is one thing too, but you've been in charge of BSides Tampa since basically the dawn of time, as far as I can tell. Like I said, I got my 2014 shirt in the closet still, from where I was first at that. But building a conference is a much bigger deal than a lot of people think it is. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that and see just kind of your insights to this and some of the things that you didn't expect. So let's start with that. You started BSides Tampa back in 20-something, right? 13. Okay, so 2013. And, when you first started that, what was the biggest thing you think that you expected but didn't happen, or totally didn't expect, right? Like, what was the biggest surprise when it came to putting together your first in-person conference back then?
When we initially decided to throw on BSide Tampa conference, it wasn't just me. It was also our co-founder, Lori Brown. She went to BSides NOLA, and one of our chapter members went to a BSide, I think in Atlanta someplace, and they came back and said, hey, why don't you guys consider doing a BSide? So I reached out to the BSide folks and Jack Daniels, and we started talking, and he said, well, if you're interested in doing it, why don't you guys, there's one other person who's interested in doing a BSide conference in Tampa. Why don't you reach out to her? It's like, oh, who is it? It's like, oh, it's Lori Brown. It's like, oh, yeah. we happen to work together during that time. So I just walked down the hallway like, hey, let's do BSide. That's easy. So, hey, it came to agreement. Now, one of the things that we thought about, but one of the big things we thought about that didn't come through was probably the audience size. So when we did our first BSide conference, well, we thought that it would be a lot easier. We thought that everyone would be barking at our door to host it there. Not the case. As soon as you tell any organization, any resort, hotel, etc., you're going to invite, yes, you, me, and a couple hundred computer hackers there. We got kicked out a lot of places because of that. As soon as they hear about who's coming, they're like, oh, we have to cancel this contract. And that happened about 3 times during our whole entire thing here. Also, the crowd. We expect, we just open up and the crowd will show up. It's not really the case. And the first year we did it for free. So we thought that, and we had like maybe 2,000 people register for the conference, which is a ridiculous amount for the first year. But we had a no-show rate around, I guess, 30 to 45%. And that was because it was free. One thing we found out that was there's a perceived value. If people see anything that's for free, they don't perceive a value in it, so they don't show up. They register for it and they don't show up. And that affects you because we've told our sponsor we're expecting this many people. We provided free lunch and food and swag. We ordered a whole bunch of stuff. I still have, that's why I don't have to do laundry, because I still have a lot of shirts. Our first year I just put on and wear whenever I want to. So yeah, at that first year, we got a better idea of why people didn't show up, why there's such a drop in the number of registered versus people who attended, and how to make adjustments from there. But yeah, thinking that everyone will welcome you with open arms and thinking that the crowds will show up, those are the two of the biggest things that we thought that would easily happen, but didn't occur necessarily.
That's interesting. When I was with ISC Squared, I was over, Congress as a director of member relations over Congress, and our series of what we like security conferences, just the small ones we had, right? That ran across the country, and they were just rather small ones, and they were always free. But what we found is, just like you said, there was a lot of no shows on the free stuff. So we would have all these people register, but not come, and so. We figured out they don't have any skin in the game at that point, right? They're just, I'll register, no big deal. And then everyone else is going, okay, whoa, we need a bigger room or something like that. Now, what we found is by just giving it like a token price, honestly, we started charging like $5 or something for the conference. It made a huge difference in our no-show numbers because now they're like, oh, well, I'm committed. I'm $5 into this thing.
Yeah.
Which blows my mind on some of these conferences like this, because if you think about what you pay to go to the big conferences and the information that you get from those compared to like BSides, which is why I'm such a huge fan, you're $20-$30 or something into a BSides and you have a full day or more of really good content coming to you. It just blows my mind that people don't go to those when there's no charge for them, especially, or even a low fee. So we kind of saw the same thing. And like I said, we made a big difference by just charging a tiny little amount so that people now had their skin in the game on that.
But when we started increasing the second year, we charged a nominal fee and we started seeing the no-show rates drop. And then every year we kind of raise it just for the cost of inflation, et cetera. And around like the fourth year, we realized we sold out. So we were like, okay, well, we'll raise the price again. Maybe we'll have some extra. And every time we raise the price, we sell out. So, it's a matter of perceived value. And like I said, whenever we had free things, even with our training classes, a lot of our instructors who want to do training classes for free, I'm like, don't do that. Charge $5 or something. But if you don't charge anything, people are going to register and not show up. And when they do, they're sold out immediately.
Yeah. And I wanted to take a real quick point and give a shout out to Lori, because Lori is awesome. She is just an awesome person. And, maybe we have her on here at some point in time in the future too, but Lori is fantastic. She really is. And I know the two of you have done so much work on this. Now, Javvad, you had some involvement in BSides London in the past, didn't you?
That's right. Yes. So this was back in 2011. We done our first BSides in London. And that was an interesting time because there was no real options for conferences here in London or in the UK as a whole at that time. There was just InfoSecurity Europe, which was every year, and that was more of a trade show. It wasn't really a conference or an event where you go to exchange ideas. You go there to pick up free USBs. So, so I think it was in 2010. There was Matt Summers. He came. He went to the US. I think he went to BSides Vegas, and he met Jack and everything, and he said, "Oh, this is a great concept. We need to do it over here." So we formed this original board, and we 5 of us, and we sort of like, I'd give Matt most of the credit. He done most of the work. He put a lot of stuff on his personal credit card because we weren't sure how much sponsorship we're going to get or not get. But we done the first one really on the cheap. It was a community center in East London. So it was like 2 floors. It was just like, you just get the venue. And then we were able to get a sponsor to get packed lunches for everyone, like a little box with a sandwich and a drink and some crisps or what have you. But honestly, it was like 300-400 people showed up, which way blew past our expectations because there was just no options. And I think people were just craving that community. And for us here, it was the first time a lot of the people in the UK actually met face to face for the first time. So it was such a great event, and it just grew from there year on year. So we didn't have any of the similar challenges. I don't think hotels were over here or venues over here have been exposed to like, oh my God, those hackers are going to come in and break everything. We're a lot more civil over here than
oh yeah, you drink your tea with your pinky out, right? So it makes all the difference.
But it is a fantastic thing seeing this grow. Nowadays it's like it's over 1,000 people, and it's at that point where you think, it feels almost a bit too big now. Like, when conferences get a bit too big, you start losing that community feel. I think that's a balancing act that you always need to worry. But I was involved in the organization for the 2 years, and then I was like, this is a lot of work. And also what we decided early on was that we would try to rotate every few years, like at least one person would leave and give opportunity for someone else from the community to join. So it becomes a community event as opposed to, this is only X, Y, and Z's event, which is great in theory, but I also think, it's hard to find people that are willing to put in the effort year on year. So for the last 5-6 years, there's been a few core people that have been running it, who've been doing a great job, but it's immensely rewarding. But I think you're right. It's people just so underestimate the amount of work and time and effort it takes to put on a good show.
Yeah, we've mentioned cost a couple times here, right? Like you were talking about people putting things on credit cards. One of the biggest things that was a shocker for me when I went to work for ISC Squared and I started dealing with Congress and stuff like that was the cost of things at these venues. We talked about a little bit before here, but you're talking $100 or $150 literally for a gallon of hot water so people can make tea. Cans of soda, $5 to $7 for a single can of soda. And, they have all these things built into the contract where you can't just back up your own truck full of pizza and start throwing it out there. You have to go through them. And in some places, we found that everything was unionized, which made it even more interesting because, here in the US, our unions are interesting where, for example, you can't carry your own box of like brochures to your table across the show floor. No, that must be done by a union employee, and you're like, really? So you got to wait for somebody to come do it. And, it was very, very complicated and really, really more expensive than I ever thought it would be. I mean, Derrick, have you run into that in some of your venues?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. A lot of times we'll get people who make suggestions because similar to what Javvad said, when we first started ours, we tried to find the lowest location. So it's community centers or colleges, something like that, somewhere where it's fairly cheap. We always have people like, well, we should have it downtown or some big hotel, etc. And I tell people like, you don't realize how much it costs. Just by having a large, they can easily run you around $30,000 just for one day at the hotel, just for a couple of rooms. That's not considering the food or anything like that. That's just, or all the other miscellaneous that they charge you for, like, you need internet, we got to charge for that. You want to lay tables, you can't do it. Like you say, you can't do it yourself. You have to hire someone else to do it. You want to have package shipped to the hotel, we have to hold it and charge for that. So it can get really expensive. And I've seen like horror stories from other folks who did B-side conferences where they said that they're personally on the hook for $30,000 or $40,000 because when they did it, they want to do it for free. They thought that, okay, well, the sponsors will help pay for it. And that doesn't always work. The sponsors the amount of sponsors you're expecting may not always come. So they're on the hook. And sponsors, I love our sponsors, but you have to have some limitations with them because they will push as much as they can. So I wouldn't want to base my whole conference on what the sponsors are going to do or pay for. And they did, and it came up and bite them in the rear. But yeah, it's very, very, very expensive. And if you start off at a high where you're saying you're at a large hotel, there's no way you can sustain that. You're going to eventually crash and burn.
Yeah. So interesting thing that Eric mentioned to me before we started recording is that you, Derrick, I think at one point were considering doing a B-sides on a boat. Mm-hmm. Because is it true you're a Steven Seagal fan and that you saw Under Siege?
Yeah. We had the cake planned out and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, it was like, practicing my knife fighting skills and everything. Damn it. Oh, yeah. Well, each year we try to you have to grow, and the conference, we wanted to try something different. And if you're in Florida, like, oh, how far away from the beach? You go 30 minutes in any direction, you're in the water. So we wanted to see something new, and we never saw a B-side conference at sea before. And there's a lot of pros to it, such as the food and everything is free. The rooms are fairly low cost and lots of booze, and you're in international waters. So any type of talks that you really could not do in the US, you could probably do it there. So we had it set up and everything. And we have the different facilities, because on most cruise ships, there's lots of different rooms. It's just there's lots of theaters, rooms, etc., that aren't used for those type of events. So we had it reserved through the agency. As time went by, they informed us like, well, this room is not going to be available at the moment because they want to do some type of show or whatever. So we're going to move you to an alternative location. Like, oh, okay, sure, no problem. And then next thing you know, well, we have to move you to this other track to another alternative location. So I started asking, like, okay, what are your alternative locations here? So, well, in the cruise ship, in the main floor, in the lobby area, that we'll set up chairs and tables there. I'm like, so everyone's walking by during the talk. You're like, yeah, but we'll have little curtains up, so at least you can't see them. But okay, I can hear them. But that's the thing. So we're like, and they were like, one track was going to be in a hallway. One track was going to be out on the deck right by the pool. I'm like,
far corner of the Lido deck by the tower turn.
You're like,
you put that on the agenda.
You can hear the toilet flush from the area. I'm like, no, this is not going to work here. So we decided to cancel it. But yeah, it was a good idea. It's just couldn't pan out with this cruise line.
And now imagine the cruise lines are like, please come, please do something now. Please. We haven't sailed in like months. Please do something, right?
Salmonella free. Trust me. Come on in.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting angle, and it was a great idea. And I know, people were pretty hyped, and there's pros and cons to everything because, when you do something like that, you're also committing several days to it. It's not just one, but it's an awesome excuse to go, hey, I'm going on a security thing. It's a couple days, it's on a cruise, as you're getting the company to pay for it, but I mean, there's some really cool things about that. And I think it was a really neat idea, but I can see where the logistics of that, and especially when the other side is just going, yeah, we're going to give you an alternate location. I mean, that's pretty ugly. That could go south pretty fast, right? Javvad, you've been stuffed in alternate locations before, right?
Yes.
Awkward silence. Oh man!
Actually, what? One year, I was seriously like, well, it was a serious idea on the back of a napkin, but I never pursued it. But every year, whenever there's RSA or Black Hat, getting flights from London to the States is just, you have to book way in advance. They booked out really quickly, and you get on the flight, and like every other seat, you see someone wearing a hacker t-shirt of some description. And so, because it's like London's also a hub, like a lot of flights come into from Europe, they come or further afield, they'll come into London and they use it as a connection over to the States. And I really thought it'd be a great idea to charter a flight from London to RSA or Black Hat and sell it to people going to the conference, and then use the flight as a semi conference as well, where people do their talks on the plane. Not sure everyone wants to hear a talk on a plane, but or you could just have like a massive LAN party or something, or capture the flag. Who can own the pilot before?
Yeah, I was going to say, of all things, trying to sell we're going to have a hacker conference in the air on one of your airplanes to the airlines, and Chris Roberts is going to head it up. Something.
What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, I'm thinking that would be a hard sell, but brilliant idea. Maybe you leave that part out of the reason you're chartering it, right? It is interesting, though. You're right. I mean, whenever we go to these big conferences like that, you end up at these connecting airports, and you're on the flight, and you're like, hey, and you're looking around, or you're on Twitter, and they're doing screenshots of like, it seriously had to happen to me like 4 rows ahead on the same. I'm like, hey, I'm on that flight too, And so, it's kind of funny when that happens, because everyone kind of gets together, and you're kind of like telling your neighbor in the seat, like, don't connect to Wi-Fi, Don't connect to Wi-Fi. Bad idea. Don't connect to Wi-Fi.
But it's free though.
Right. Yeah, I usually have to pay, but this time it's free. Yeah, good luck with that. Anyways, so one last thing I just wanted to ask you here is, if you were to give advice to somebody who's considering doing one of these, what advice would you give to them? What do you think would be kind of some of the key things before we run out of time here, but that you would give to these folks who are interested in starting, let's say, an in-person conference or a hybrid conference? Because we're going to be seeing those come back now.
Well, first I would say make sure you have a team of folks, a minimum of 3, because you can't do it all yourself. You're going to need people to assign tasks to. And know your audience. Remember who you actually are looking to attract for attendance. Set yourself a budget. And also, if you have Netflix, go to Netflix and watch the movie Fyre Festival. I'm not sure if you guys have ever seen that before, but it's a train wreck. But it's somebody who wanted to have a big concert in the Bahamas. But if you look at it, you'll see and look at why it failed. It looks at all the same things that happens with most conferences, like, okay, failed to allocate the correct amount of time to actually build it out, underestimating your resources, overestimating the attendance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So watch it and see where they made a mistake at, and learn from there. But and also get a lot of sleep, because you're not going to get that much as you go along. And like I said, if you ever attend any conferences, learn from what they did great and what they did wrong. But one thing is I would definitely recommend is don't try to duplicate what they have there, because when we want to do BSides Tampa, we had a lot of folks who've been to DEF CON, Black Hat, Hope, Chaos Club, etc. And they all, let's do it here. I'm like, it's not going to work here. And big conferences are great and bad at the same time. It's great because you get to see a lot of people. You get to see what some of the things they have and some of the talks, etc. But it's bad that people try to duplicate that in like Boise, Montana, and like you can't do that. And also, people don't consider that DEF CON, it took them 20 years to get to where they're at. This is your first year. You got to crawl before you run. You can't really plan on having a 7-day conference with like fire dancers and smoke bombs and juggling midgets, etc. Pace yourself. So those are some of the things I would definitely recommend. And also, like I said, watch Fyre Festival. It's a train wreck. It's funny to me, but it's a train wreck. But it will tell you, it will highlight you on some of the things you have to look at whenever you put on these conferences and some of the pitfalls.
Yeah. So I think Ja Rule, the rapper, was one of the organizers for that as well. That's how I remember.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that was supposed to be. Yeah, it was supposed to be super hoity-toity, fancy, like bougie sort of thing, and they ended up with like blow-up mattresses and just garbage. Like it was
refugees.
And I understand how that kind of goes down, but they really promoted that as this super high-end luxury music festival that all went to hell and ended up like the rest of the music festivals usually do, with people sleeping in the dirt and smelling really bad and vomiting in corners or whatever. So good point on that. Definitely a good point on that. Now, I have to say, the time commitment, BSides Tampa just ended a couple of weeks ago, right? So you got what, 8 or 9 months before you start on the next one?
We usually start a minimum of 6 months out. It's right now we're actually starting now, so around 7 or 8 months.
I figured you're already you got your location taken care of already, and you're starting to roll through that. And so one other thing I do want to point out, and I have to do this because this is my self-shaming thing, is when you're talking about having speakers and you're talking about having people there and volunteers, it doesn't always work out. And I swear, Derek, like every time I've tried to speak with you guys, something just stupid has come up, right? And I volunteered with you guys once or twice, but there was a couple times where I started to volunteer, and then stuff just went crazy, and I had to step back from that. And I feel really bad because it's always like your conference that it happens, and I don't know if it's because it's right in my own backyard, and all of this other stuff going on, but like, you got to be a little bit flexible. And this year, it came up and I was accepted for the CFP and I was all excited. And then I saw the date and I was like, man, that's my kids' color guard finals in Daytona. And so I'm like, oh man, but then I saw that I could record it and provide it. And so the flexibility allowed me to go ahead and record it and then be on the QA. I had to get an extra long, like a late checkout from the hotel, but I'm sitting in there on the QA, like trying to answer questions and interacting with people from the hotel, because I couldn't do it live from the hotel. There was just no way. As we're like, they're already packing the car to get out to leave for their, for their deal. But, my point is we have to be flexible a little bit. And as much as I try never to do that, I've had to, flake out on you guys a couple times. And it's just part of doing the conference, especially I think with volunteers.
Wow. Yeah, you can't take it personal.
You try to avoid, for someone that tries to avoid it, you're the most flakiest person I know. Nothing brought me more joy than going to Hack Miami with you. And I sat at the back of the room, and there's like about 5 other people in the room. I think 2 of them were behind a pillar, so they couldn't see it.
It was like a pillar. You had to look around. I had my laptop sitting on the edge of like a bar stool because they didn't have any tables, and the little projector table was barely big enough for the projector. But I did make it to that. Right. Yeah. We did a video about that trip. Javvad and I did, because I have a travel curse that has been kind of hovering over me for years now. And when I took Javvad to train him, because he learned everything from me, we ended up, instead of flying down to Miami, we drove down there, which took an extra 7 or 8 hours, more than it was supposed to. And then, this conference was, I hate to say it, and I'm sorry if you're with Hack Miami, but it was underwhelming. It just was. The venue was rough because like Javvad said, it was actually it was kind of like 2 rooms kind of put together, but they were tiny. It was like the 3rd bar out in the back corner sort of thing. And there were literally posts with chairs sitting around it, and like maybe 10 people or something in there. It was rough. And, it's one of these things that is tough from the presenter side and from an attendee side. I know it's no fun to be sitting there, having to deal with that side of deals. But thanks for bringing that up. It's a deep, dark, sore subject for me, Javvad.
It reminds me, actually, I mentioned Jarul earlier just about the Fyre Festival. So he's got this ongoing beef with, I think, 50 Cent. And at one time, Jarul was going to perform at a venue, and 50 Cent, and I love the pettiness here, he went and he bought all the front 5 rows of tickets, and so that when Jarul showed up, the first 5 rows would be empty. When the lights are shining and you can't really see that far back anyway. So I feel like that's what I achieved without spending any money, by seeing you perform to a half-empty room.
Well, speakers and performers, if you will, we're all divas, right, Derrick? I mean, yeah. we kind of are. I'm not gonna lie. I've seen Javvad go to places, and he's like, "There is a brown M&M. Why is that in here?" Yeah. So that is a whole nother area that you have to think about, is those personal relationships. Something you guys do that I really like, Derrick, is you assign that speaker wrangler basically to folks. Yeah, the liaison, to help the speaker understand what's expected of them and to keep track of what's going on, as opposed to some of these conferences where they're like, okay, you're speaking on Tuesday, and you hear nothing until like Tuesday morning. It's like, oh, and make sure. And you're like, oh crap, you don't know how anything's going. Doing those little steps like that, I think, are huge from the other side, so that we have somebody we can reach out to and go, hey, you know what? I'm not really sure how this is going to work, or something is happening that I may need something, who to contact. So kudos on that piece as well.
All right. Yeah, and that happened. I spoke at a conference once, and same thing happened like you described, where you get accepted, you're like excited, and you don't hear anything till like the day before, and they say, "Oh, you speak at 11 o'clock." I'm like, "Well, okay.
Yeah.
Do I need to bring a projector? Do I need to bring this?" And so I said, "Okay, I'm not doing that." So we created our liaisons, and they're your personal point of contact with the speakers, and yeah, they've been very positive, so it helped out.
Awesome. So on that note, I think we got to run because, quite frankly, I have another speaking session to do in about 20 minutes or so. So I don't want to blow past that one.
We won't let him blow past that one. We'll let him. So, we hate keeping him around for no reason. Derrick, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. You can catch the Jerich Show on YouTube or on jerichshow.podbean.com if you prefer to listen just to the audio without seeing our lovely faces. Why do you want to do that? I have no idea. Anyway, till next time, stay secure, my friends.